How many people do you know whose OSU ranking graph looks sort of like this, despite the fact that they're actively trying to improve and playing the game often? There's a good chance that you fall into this category. Something I've always thought about / speculated about OSU improvement is that eventually most people sort of hit some sort of wall where, unless they put a tremendous amount of effort to get past it, it's kind of hard to break through that ceiling. This is just an arbitrary observation that I've made from watching myself or my friends or just other players improve over the years. I started to wonder why this sort of thing happens and why people seem to stagger at seemingly random intervals of playtime or skill despite actively playing the game often. When learning any skill, there seems to be a universal concept of an intermediate plateau. This is essentially just reaching a stage in which you stop progressing as fast because you have less things to learn. This concept is mostly talked about in language learning communities, but I think you can apply it to OSU improvement as well pretty easily. When you first started playing OSU, think about how easy it was for you to progress from 2-star maps to 3-star maps. Now think about the difficulty between progressing from 4 to 5 stars, 5 to 6 stars, 6 to 7 stars, etc. And it becomes pretty obvious that the better you get, the harder it is to improve. Now, to most people listening to this is probably pretty obvious. Of course, this has to be the case. But how does this tie back to what I was talking about earlier? Of course, improvement in any skill, and especially OSU, isn't just some linear path that you follow. There are a ton of factors that influence any given person and how well they will progress through a given skill. Of course, for OSU, this is something like how often someone plays, when someone plays, genetics, what kind of map someone plays, etc. My point is that there's so many factors that will determine if you hit a skill wall, when you'll hit a skill wall, and for literally everyone it has to be different. So you might be wondering, how should you best go about getting over a plateau like this? Everyone knows the staple improvement advice. Play more. Hyper-focus on your weaknesses. Play more again. We've all heard this advice a million times, and it's kind of hard to argue with play more, because realistically, that is the only way to improve, and I have an entire video talking about this. Despite this, specifically when it comes to getting over a plateau, I think there's something more important than just raw playtime. The core idea that I've wanted to talk about from the start of this video is actually mindset and how your state of mind affects getting over plateaus. This isn't really something I see talked about a lot in the OSU community, and I'm mostly just talking from experience and looking at my arbitrary perspective. Looking at my personal improvement over the years and looking at my state of mind and what my mindset was like at the time, it's very easy that I can draw some connections, and I figured I would share with you guys. First of all, mindset isn't something you can just flip a switch in your brain and change. You have to be open and willing to think about things differently, and while this is difficult, I think there are things you can do that can push yourself in the right direction, and I'll talk about those here. Recently, I feel like I've undergone a drastic mindset shift, and I've noticed that I've been playing better and improving faster than I had in the past, despite that I haven't really upped my playtime as much. The first thing in regards to fixing your mindset that I really want to just hit home is that you need to have confidence when you play. I noticed that in periods in which I felt like I couldn't improve, my mindset was more about self-doubt and thinking I couldn't do something. This sounds really cliche, but when you believe that you can't do something, then you basically can't. I'm sure everyone has seen this famous White Cat clip where one of his viewers says that he can't FC the map, and White Cat basically just says, I can do anything I want if I put my mind to it, and then he FCs the map first try.
No, you can't. I decide what I can and or can't do. It's like always those guys, like early in the chat someone said I can't FC Road of Resistance with Hard Rock, and then I just did it. Like, that's just a pussy mindset. I can do whatever I want. Look, that's what I'm talking about.
You might be thinking, oh, but White Cat's one of the best players to ever touch the game. Of course he can do that. If you had the opportunity to tell someone from 6 or 7 years ago about the scores being set nowadays, they would not believe you. If people like White Cat, Imrek, Eterna, etc. didn't believe that they could push the cutting edge of this game higher, then they wouldn't have done it. If you can just convince yourself that it's possible for you to do things that you think you can't, then I guarantee you'll see some improvement. Something that I feel like has helped me a ton, and what I would recommend doing, is creating a collection of maps that you just want to FC. Now, I feel like most people have something similar to this, but something that I started doing was, if there's even a 1% chance that I can get an FC on a map, I'll put it in the folder. Now, have I put some really hard maps in there that I'll probably not FC for a very long time? Of course, but if there's even a sliver of a chance that you can FC a map, then put it in there, why not? Just by doing this, I feel like I've sort of primed my brain into convincing itself that it is possible to FC a map in which you previously didn't believe you could. I've definitely FC'd some maps that if I never put into my playlist, I probably would have never convinced myself that it was even possible to FC them, and I wouldn't have gotten the score in the first place. This might seem like a really trivial and unhelpful tip, but honestly, I feel like this is one of the best things you can do for yourself. So something else I wanted to suggest in terms of how to push your mindset to be a bit more healthier is actually not holding yourself to such a high standard. Now, this may seem a little counterintuitive from what I just talked about, and maybe I worded it wrong, but essentially you don't really want to force yourself to think that you need to be getting a top 10 or top 5 score every time you play. So everyone knows, on your OSU profile it displays your top 100 best PP scores. If you actually meaningfully want to get ranks, then getting anything below like top 30 doesn't really do anything for you, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't be pushing for scores that aren't as high in your top 100. The way I look at it, yeah, if you get a score that's 85th best, then you're not going to gain any ranks from it, but it still means that you're pushing the bar higher and higher for what it means to get a top 100 score. Something that I started trying to do was just going for scores that would give me any range of PP as long as it would land me in my top 100 plays. Just by doing this, over time you slowly push your expectations for what is a good score up and up, and eventually it's a lot higher than you remember. One day you kind of just realize that a score that would have been really impressive to you a few months ago just isn't really that impressive to you now. Now, the last thing I want to quickly touch on kind of ties into what I talked about earlier with confidence, but in a more practical way. Now, to use myself as an example for what I wanted to talk about, for the longest time I always had this irrational idea that I couldn't FC long maps, and anything that wasn't TV size I just felt like I couldn't farm. Believing that I couldn't FC long maps, I barely ever gave any attempts to it because I just didn't think I could do it. This is the same thing with mods. For the longest time I didn't really attempt anything with Hard Rock or Hidden. Once I realized I was mind blocking myself from getting scores on long maps or getting scores with Hidden Hard Rock, it was like I opened the floodgates to just so many good scores. Anyways, there's not really much more I want to talk about. This video was kind of just made on a whim and I didn't really write a script for it. I kind of just wanted to talk about some arbitrary things I noticed and how I feel like people don't really pay attention to mindset that much. I'm not sure many people are going to get to the end of this video listening to me ramble about mindset, but if you did, please let me know in the comments if you have any thoughts on this, or if you have any experiences of your own just trying to change your mindset and what happened for you. Please let me know I'm not crazy. I don't really like doing that thing most YouTubers do at the end of their videos, but just this once, I do want to say that I do plan on streaming on Twitch relatively soon, so if you could follow me over there, I would really appreciate that. Anyways, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.